Did you know 50% of all North American children will experience divorce? Just take a second to think about that fact. That's every other child. The way divorce affects children is often overlooked when deciding to make a separation. Children are also overlooked in most divorce statistics. The graph shows marriages and divorces in the USA and where they're most common. How many kids do you think are involved in this statistic? We don't know. Teens and adolescents are as directly affected by divorce as the adults. They cannot go unrecognized. I have personally experienced my parents' separation 2 years ago. We can decrease the number of divorces involving children and adolescents by making society more aware of how it really influences them. In order to fully understand how divorce affects children and adolescents, one should understand that divorce affects kids of all ages, it influences their everyday life, and has negative long-term effects. However, in some cases, divorce may be necessary or it may be the best choice. In cases where physical abuse, verbal abuse, or where no children are present, divorce may be the best option. First, before making a decision to end a marriage, parents should consider the timing of the divorce in their child's or children's lives. Divorce affects kids of all ages. Although young and sometimes naive to the situation, kids under the age of 8 are negatively influenced by divorce. As noted by Ola Polisari and Halevi Aro, later on in life, only 40% of girls said they were mentally okay during the separation, which means over half were not. 49% of boys developed heavy drinking problems later on as well. In addition to these effects, the harmful impacts of divorce only increase as the child matures. Kids from the ages from 8 to 12 are affected the worst by parental divorce. Depression, future relationship issues, self-esteem problems, and being mentally stable are all concepts that kids can struggle with during this crucial stage of development. Secondly, after understanding that no matter what age, young or old, kids are affected negatively by divorce, a person should understand that their everyday lives will be changed as well. After the separation, most kids are negatively affected. Part of everyday life is learning. Most kids attend school 5 out of 7 days a week. Learning is an essential part of young life, and when divorce takes place, their learning capabilities are altered. Studies show that kids who experience divorce are more apt to receive lower grades, consequently affecting their options for future education. According to a study done across 14 countries done by Fabrizio Bernardi, children of separated parents have a probability of achieving a college degree that is on average 7 percentage points lower than those from an intact family. In these days, going to college, getting a stable job, and eventually buying a home or apartment are important parts of life, and you aren't able to do that without a solid education. But not only does divorce influence learning, it also affects the child's stability. Stability can be viewed as mentally or physically. Divorce harms both aspects of a child's life. In many cases, kids travel between their mother's and father's households every other week, causing them to feel like they're always on the go. This constant switch can damage their sense of security. If a child experiences divorce during their developmental stages, it can influence their confidence, their ability to be social, and their perspective on what is healthy for a relationship. Being mentally stable is an essential part of growing up. Ending a marriage not only has short-term effects, but it also has long-term effects that cannot go without recognition. Divorce has negative, long-lasting effects on kids. From experience of parental split, kids tend to develop bad future relationships. From watching their parents' marriage, they tend to follow the example set by divorce, or they just don't marry at all out of fear for the same outcome. The actions and attitudes of their parents influence their life and the quality of their future relationships. Many times after divorce, adults choose to remarry, causing a constantly changing environment for their kids. In a situation of remarriage, a child has no say over whom or how many new siblings will enter his or her home. This circumstance does not allow adequate time for a child to cope with the situation before a new family is brought into the picture. According to Constance Arends, who conducted an analysis of 89 families, when asked whether divorce or a parent's remarriage was more difficult to cope with, more than half the people said that divorce was the hardest part. Over 1/3 said that remarriage was worse than the divorce itself. Whether day-to-day or lifelong, these results prove to be damaging to a child experiencing divorce. We can decrease the number of divorces involving children and adolescents by making society more aware of how it really affects them. In conclusion, divorce is not a decision made by children. They are simply trapped in whatever situation they're placed in. Once a child's foundation is changed, damage will follow in any and all aspects of their life. These detrimental changes may stay with them for a lifetime. Unfortunately, these unintended consequences are generally not considered by the parents before the decision is made to separate their family. No matter what age, kids' life will be negatively affected by divorce. After the separation, kids' everyday life will be altered as well. Divorce is more than a short-term decision. It has negative, long-lasting effects that aren't considered. Personally, my brother and I have experienced the negative consequences of divorce and want to prevent any other children from going through the same experience.